On the 26th of December 2004, the sea here off Sumatra, Indonesia, reared up and savaged a huge swathe of coastline around the entire Indian Ocean. The wall of water was triggered by a massive earthquake out to sea, and it came ashore and slammed into the Indonesian province of Aceh first, before spreading further afield to Thailand, Sri Lanka and India. I'm Dan Rivers, and I've come back to Aceh 5 years after I first reported on the catastrophe here. It was a story I will never forget. A cataclysm without parallel in modern times, now simply known as the tsunami.
These haunting images have lost none of their potency with the passage of time. A tragedy on biblical scale, affecting 11 countries and leaving some 245,000 people dead or missing. This was the moment of impact in Indonesia's remote Aceh province. The black swirling water choked with rubble is unstoppable. It has the power of the entire Indian Ocean behind it. Even at the city's main mosque, 2 kilometres from the sea, the water is several metres deep and covered in a rippling layer of wreckage. This was the port 2 days later. You can barely see the water for debris and bodies. The tsunami was caused by a massive tremor under the ocean at the junction of 2 tectonic plates that have been sliding past each other for millennia. The sudden release of pressure displaced a vast quantity of water, a huge wave that fanned out across the ocean. It hit Aceh on the tip of the Indonesian island of Sumatra first, with devastating results. I reported from Aceh in the days after the disaster.
This is just typical of the scenes we've encountered on this road. The tsunami smashed its way through here. You can see before the tsunami came you couldn't see to the horizon. Now you can see all the way out to sea. It deposited all this debris here, and after the wave had come through, the villagers say there were screams of people still trapped alive, hadn't drowned. The next day this entire place had fallen silent.
In some places the destruction was total. From the air it looked like a sandy riverbed, but this used to be a thriving town, scoured down to its foundations by the ocean. It's difficult to comprehend how anyone could have survived this, but they did. I arrived on an aid helicopter to find an island of life in this ocean of devastation. This was the first contact these people had had with the outside world for a week. One woman's story has particularly stuck with me, that of Fitri Annie. She was just 3 months pregnant when the tsunami hit. We filmed as she walked through the remains of her home. This was the first time she'd seen it since the tsunami. 5 years on, we found her again. She tells me what happened that day.
We saw someone running from the beach screaming, "The seawater is rising! The seawater is rising!" We saw a huge wave. It was black. We ran and fell, and when we reached the main road, we went to the upper level of a 2-story shop. The water hit me there and dragged me far to sea.
By some miracle, she was picked up in the open ocean, a long way from the shore.
I was in the water for 10 hours. I was still at the sea when the call to prayer came in the evening. I was rescued by a fisherman boat.
Fitri lost 10 members of her family, including her husband. She's no idea where his remains ended up. But it's possible he ended up in a mass grave. There were so many bodies decaying in the tropical heat that the authorities had no choice but to unceremoniously dump them in grave pits. For the relatives looking on, it was too much to bear.
I remember being here 5 years ago, and the smell and the sights were just overpowering. There were thousands upon thousands of dead bodies arriving by the truckload. They started burying them where that flagpole is, and by the time they'd finished, this entire field was full of corpses. 50,000 people were interred here, and they were buried 12 metres deep.
The site of the mass graves is now a memorial park. Finishing touches are still being put on the sculpture representing the tsunami. The rest is a simple field, sowed with so much sorrow. Samzani was working for the Red Cross and helped to bury thousands here.
Sometimes we cry when we remember that day. No word can describe my feelings. I lost 9 kilos in weight when the tsunami happened. There is one image that I can't forget on the first day of the tsunami. We brought about 700 bodies here. So many little children. I grabbed them off the car, 4 at a time. I just can't get that off my mind. I keep seeing those images when I look at my grandchildren.
But the horror wasn't confined to the mass graves. This was the city's main hospital, buried in mud and bodies. Soldiers cleared some wards from where I witnessed the most horrendous scenes. This is a report I filed 1 week after the tsunami.
This woman has 2 broken legs. She's been in excruciating pain for a week. The wounded are being carried in from outlying villages. Many have been trying to get here for days. The chaotic operating theatre is already in full swing. There's no anaesthetic, just immediate surgery to try and save lives. I watch survivors with bones jutting from their limbs endure medieval surgery, hands bound to stretchers to hold them still.
I saw people with broken bones. Their eyes were torn. Their legs were broken. Heads were split. Their bodies were chopped. Thank God I survived.
Aceh was eviscerated by the power of the ocean, but that same power was translated thousands of kilometres to other countries, making the tsunami a disaster of unimaginable proportions.